Hi everyone, welcome back to Visually Hidden Selects. I'm Peter O'Brien, and today I'd like to talk to you about Dawn of the Dead from 1978, written and directed by George A. Romero and starring Gaylen Ross, David Emge, Scott H. Reiniger, and Ken Foree. This is the second film in George Romero's Living Dead series, following 1968's landmark Night of the Living Dead. This is one of those situations where the sequel may actually be better than the original. However, much like Star Wars, the original Night of the Living Dead was just very groundbreaking cinematically, not only for the horror genre, but also for independent filmmaking and specifically regional filmmaking. It was not a Hollywood movie. However, George Romero, who primarily worked out of Pittsburgh for his entire career, managed to become a very successful regional filmmaker, and Dawn of the Dead played a big part in that. And in my personal opinion, it is the best film of the series. It's just, the story moves very swiftly, and it is very well developed, and so are the characters. The performances are very strong, and it's just overall a great example of sophisticated filmmaking, and especially in a low-budget, independent production. Unlike Night of the Living Dead, the characters in this film are already under siege once it begins. They start off in Philadelphia, which has been overrun, and they escape that city in a helicopter and find their way to a large shopping mall where they barricade themselves in to ride out the ensuing debauchery. One of the catalysts for getting this film made was actually the participation of Dario Argento, who is a very famous Italian filmmaker, and he is very famous in the horror genre as well. He reached out to Romero when he heard that Romero was thinking about a sequel to Night of the Living Dead and invited him out to his home in Italy to work on the script. And there they kind of bounced ideas off of each other, and Dario Argento also secured a big piece of the financing for this film with the proviso that he would get to edit the international European cut of the film. So Romero had control over the US and English-speaking territories, and Argento had control over the rest of the world, which is why there are multiple versions of this film. Generally speaking, there are three: the US theatrical version, the US extended version, and the European cut, which is a lot tighter and eliminates a lot of the humor that Romero injected into his cut of the film. But the actual inception of this film came about when George Romero was invited by a former classmate of his and colleague to visit the Monroeville Mall. And that gave him the inspiration to develop this story of a band of survivors taking shelter and refuge in the mall and taking advantage of all the comforts that the mall has to offer. So through his friendship with the owner of the Monroeville Mall, he was able to secure that location. And they did most of their shooting throughout the winter of 1977 into 1978. I was never more excited in my entire life to go to a mall than when I went to the Monroeville Mall. It has changed a lot since the film was shot in 1977, 1978. But if you know what you're looking for, and if you watch the film, you'll be able to see certain features that are still there. It is very exciting, and I believe they even host certain zombie-related and Romero-related events throughout the year. Monroeville Mall, check it out. The original music in this film is partially composed by Goblin, who is a group that Dario Argento works with frequently, so he brought them into the mix, and he utilized a lot of their score in his international cut. Romero used certain cues from Goblin, but he also used some stock library music, much like he did in Night of the Living Dead, just to achieve the effects that he wanted to with his film. I think my favorite part of this film is probably when the characters are starting to secure the mall. They've decided to set up their base there, and they just make a plan and start to barricade the entrances and clean up the inside of the mall of all the existing zombies. It's just a really fun and tense sequence, and it sets up a lot of things that come after that. So it's really just a good kind of turning point in the story where it's like now they've made their commitment and they're seeing it through, but there are consequences to their actions. I just really love the dynamic of the characters, specifically Peter and Roger, their kind of partnership that develops, and then also Fran and Steven, and then how the two kind of mix and mingle to work through this situation they're involved in and how their characters grow. Fran in particular is a very strong female lead. She really is kind of the only female character in the movie, and she's one of the main characters. She just rises to the occasion, and she's determined to not be a victim. But I feel like all of the characters in this film bring something to the story and bring something to each other that advances their characters. I think one of the real stars of this movie, though, is Tom Savini, who did the makeup special effects for this film. He also did a lot of the stunts, and he even plays a role in this movie as well. And as a sequel to Night of the Living Dead, which had a very strong reputation and legacy, this film really appealed to horror fans. It kind of bridged a lot of pop culture gaps. The film does have almost like a comic book type feel to the explicit horror, and even the presentation of the horror. The blood, for example, has this almost like kind of like fluorescent hue to it, which Tom Savini was not really happy about, but George Romero loved because it embraced that comic book vibe that he was going for. I feel like his creativity in the makeup effects really shines and stands out, specifically the shotgun to the head effect, which happens during the first 10 minutes of this movie. It's very, very exceptional and effective. I first became aware of this film when I was in junior high. My cousin had it on video, and I remember him putting it on before we went to school one morning, and we just watched the opening scene of the attack on the tenement building. And from that point on, it always kind of stuck with me, and over the years, I've just grown a very strong fondness for this particular film. It is one of my all-time favorite horror films. It is my favorite zombie movie for sure. Some people might watch this film today and feel like, oh well, it's a little dated or cheap looking, but at the same time, this is like almost ground zero for the genre, and especially the genre as we know it today. The legacy of this film, i.e. everything that has come after it, you would not have without what's in this film. There's just an endless amount of entertainment packed into this film, and I cannot recommend it enough. So that's it for Dawn of the Dead. If you have seen this film, it's definitely worth rewatching. If you have not seen this film, please check it out, leave us a comment, let us know what you think. And we will be discussing it at length on the Visually Hidden Selects podcast, so be sure to tune into that. And until next time, see ya!